today it's going to be Miss Laurie Wright and Tiffany and myself, Kimmie. Laurie, you want to introduce yourself really quick?
Sure. I'm Laurie White. I'm with Community Farm Alliance, and I am located in Berea, Kentucky, and serve as Central Kentucky Local Food Coordinator for CFA.
And Tiffany.
And I'm Tiffany Bellfield El-Amin, also with Community Farm Alliance, and I am the Food System Equity Organizer, and I'm out of Madison County.
And I'm Kimmie Ishmael. I am the Policy Campaign Coordinator, and I am out of Lexington, Kentucky. So we'll talk a little bit briefly as we get started here about Community Farm Alliance and a little bit about who we are. So CFA is started in 1985 during the farm crisis. They helped a lot of different farmers during that time and gained a lot of grassroots support and never stopped going. So we have very many passionate, committed members from across the state. And our members are a mix of urban and rural farmers and non-farmers and young and old. And the community in Farm Alliance is not defined by geography, but by the values that govern good stewardship of land, family, and community. So we hope everyone here is we hope everyone here who is not a CFA member, or if anyone watching is not a CFA member, we really encourage you to become a CFA member and join us for more activities, but we'll be talking more about becoming a CFA member at the end of the presentation today when we talk about our advocacy resources. But talking a little bit more about what we are talking about today, we are going to be going over so many things. So we just want to make clear, us three here, we have collaborated over this, and there's a lot of information to take in. This is just scratching the surface, and we just want to let you all know that this is just scratching the surface and that there's going to be plenty of room to be able to discuss these topics after this, and hopefully, do some more work on these issues in the future. So we're going to be talking about the status of Black farmers in the U.S. and Kentucky, an overview of the actual Farm Bill content and the process of the Farm Bill. Then we'll be talking about programs that affect Black farmers, the Federation Farm Bill platform. Then we'll be doing a Jamboard activity to get some ideas for policy priorities. And then we'll be talking about how you all can have a voice in the process of the Farm Bill.
Also, just want to let you know, we've got, you are welcome to share comments or questions in the chat as we go along. That goes for anyone who's watching on Facebook Live too. You can touch base with us there. And this is also being recorded, so you don't have to worry if you don't get everything down. We'll have a recording for you.
Yes. All right. And if you missed our Farm Bill basics, do not fret. We do have it recorded on YouTube. I just dropped the link in the chat for you all to be able to access that. Or if you missed the link and forget, just YouTube Community Farm Alliance, and we have a whole plethora of videos for you to watch, but Farm Bill Basics being one of them. So yep, and this will be added to that collection as well afterwards. So all right, and now moving on, we can talk about Black farmers in the U.S. Tiffany.
Hey, good evening, everyone. So part of doing this Farm Bill around Black farmers specifically, we want to drop some demographics, some facts. And I'm sure some of us know some of this information, but some of it we're learning along the way. So understand that today's Black farmers only own about 1% of farmland. Now, in 1892, with the Homestead Act, there was millions of land given to folks, right? But only 5,000 of those were Black, right? Between 1910 and 1920, with the freedom of slaves and sharecroppers buying up land, having the opportunity to buy land around 1919, it increased to where Black farmers across the United States had up to 20 million acres of land, which was 14% of total of all the agricultural land in the United States. It's not even been a century and we've lost 90% of that land. Today, only 45,000 out of 3.4 million farmers in the United States identify as Black. And these numbers are down from 1 million Black farmers about a century ago. There's difference between Black farmers, Black stewarders, and Black landowners, but in the past century, it's just totally decreased, which gives even more leverage that we need to start obtaining when it comes to policy work. Next slide, please. So this graph, Laurie found this graph, but it's very important to know that when they respectfully, USDA, the federal government does the statistics on how many Black farmers are in the United States, the majority of those Black farmers, though they still be less than 1%, are found in Texas, Mississippi, down lower. When you get into Kentucky, we only have less than 1% of Black farmers here in the state as of 2021, 2022. Next slide, please. Going through all the characteristics of folks, you know, a lot of times we're talking about equity and inclusion, and we want to think about everybody, right? And when you look at these numbers, they're almost daunting to know that Black farmers are only 48,000, almost 49,000. And at one time, Black farming was a great percentage of those folks who were farming. No matter what that looked like, from the time where we were forced into labor farming to sharecropping to land ownership, we were a good, we were never the majority, but we had a good percentage. And now we are literally at the bottom of you know, the population of farmers here in the United States.
Check that out over on the right there, the government payments per farm.
Yeah.
That's not to Black farmers overall, that's per farm. And so all of these programs that we're going to talk about tonight that are in the Farm Bill, there's a lot of work to be done to be making sure that these are being distributed equitably.
For sure, for sure. A lot of programs, as Laurie said, that we'll see as we go through all the programs that funding has come through the state. Kentucky's received this funding. The places that receive the funding to help socially disadvantaged farmers, there are farmers being helped. It's just not necessarily the Black farmer. So Black farmers in Kentucky, this is a map that we produced at the Kentucky Black Farmers Conference last year. And as you see, there are a lot of farmers in the central part of the state, but more so in the west part of the state. But understanding that there are less than 450 farmers in the state. And that is from your new beginning farmers to your farmers who are elder, who have been working and steward the land for centuries, right? Like it's the whole diaspora of Black farming. It's 450 or less. There are 76,000 agricultural operations that are represented in the state. Just to understand that we are less than 1% of Black farmers here in the state. And that is not different in other states, but the difference is how we implement Kentucky's policy and how we get engaged with how finances and funding is coming through the state, so we can uplift some of the younger farmers that are coming through and these new beginning farmers that are also coming to the state or are still here trying to steward their land. Oh, sorry. Yes, I just seen that. Martin just asked, what are the different colored dots that were on the map? So we have a Kentucky Black Farmer Directory, right, that CFA Farm Table Team has curated. I split them up by regions. So green is what we would say is West Kentucky. The blue is Central Kentucky, and the dark blue are Eastern Kentucky farmers. All of the farmers listed or dotted out are listed as Black farmers here in Kentucky.
So thanks for that overview, Tiffany. So now we're going to talk about what is the Farm Bill and how it's written. This enormous piece of legislation that's very influential was started in the 1930s. It was the original, and we call it the Farm Bill, but that's kind of like a nickname for it. It's never actually called the Farm Bill. So the first Farm Bill was the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933. And it was primarily dealing with farm safety net issues related to the Dust Bowl and the price crashes of the Great Depression. In 1983, nutrition programs were added to the Farm Bill, and it became an omnibus bill. So that means that it goes through different committees in Congress. It doesn't just go through the Agriculture Committee. It grew in the 70s when conservation titles were added. And then the most recent Farm Bill was the 2018 Agriculture Improvement Act. And that one was largely a carryover of the 2014 Farm Bill. So the Farm Bill expires about every 4 to 5 years and needs to be reauthorized. So we are due in 2023 to have a new Farm Bill written and passed this year. So I want to talk a little bit about the context in which the Farm Bill was formed. So in the 1930s, we had the Dust Bowl, we had the Great Depression. It was at the height of sharecropping. It was, this is pre-civil rights movement. We're in Jim Crow laws here. This is before women had the women's rights movement. And it was focused on the grain farms on the prairies of the Midwest. And you can still see in the spending and the titles of the Farm Bill today that that's still where the emphasis of the Farm Bill is. And we've come a long way in addressing other crops, and but there's still a long way to go.
So before we dive into the process of everything, a lot of people want to know, how much does a Farm Bill even cost? What is even broken up, and where is the money being spent? So there are 3 Farm Bill titles that account for most of the, there's 4 that are accounting for most of the spending, which is nutrition, and that houses the SNAP, which formerly known as food stamps, and then commodities, conservation, and crop insurance. And then you can kind of see out from the side the stuff that's in the tiny little sliver there, what is in that. But also this is in billions of dollars, so just remember when reading that is in billions. So those are the top 4 that take up most of the budget when it comes to the Farm Bill. But when we look at the other stuff that's not included in the nutrition, because the nutrition part takes up a little more than 75+% of the Farm Bill spending budget, this is how the other parts are broken down in spending. So you can see here crop insurance, conservation, and things like that are very high in spending as well. So as we go into talking about how processes are and what the Farm Bill is, I feel like we should talk about a little bit what is state and federal policy and what the difference between the two are. So federal laws apply to everyone in the United States. obviously, and then local laws apply to people who live and work in a particular state, Commonwealth like Kentucky, territory, county, city, then all the way down to township, village. So something that might be similar to a law that was started federally would be something like SNAP, and then something more state issue would be something like Connect. So there are two separate things there, and they happen at different times of the year. They are not in sync, and they do not collaborate with one another in that aspect. So who writes the Farm Bill on the federal level? So at the federal level, there are multiple committees that meet on different issues, and there's an ag committee, and they are the primary, they hold the primary responsibility of drafting the farm bills. So the committee on the House and Senate of the Ag, Nutrition, and Forestry committees are typically the ones who start this. This includes people like our Senator Mitch McConnell, but also has other influential members like James Comer, Andy Barr, even Rand Paul. And also when writing the Farm Bill, there will be throughout the legislative process chances to take in or out. So that is amending the bill throughout the process of it. So there will be chances to take in and out certain aspects of different things. Now that we know who writes the Farm Bill and where it starts, I kind of want to go over the process really quick, because not to get real schoolhouse rock on everyone, but I don't know if they broke it down or helped me understand anything in the 5th grade. So so we just talked about it gets drafted in those committees. And in those committees, they will vote on their own version of the bill and vote it out of the committee. So happens in the House and the Senate, they vote on those in their committees and send them both to the House and Senate floors. And there they will debate, amend, and vote on the bill in the House and the Senate. So that is all very straightforward, but then step 3 here, a lot of people don't know is once you have a bill in the House and the Senate, we have to come together to make one bill that will house it. And they form what is called a conference committee. And this conference committee comes together and they combine the two bills together and agreeing on certain aspects of things. And then that bill goes to the House and the Senate floors for their final vote. Then after that, the bill is going to be sent to the president for its signature. So, so it's a long process, a drawn out process. Currently, the timeline is to be voted on in September, but over past in the history of this bill, it has been pushed and not voted on in the timeline it was supposed to be. So we will be keeping an eye out on that and keeping up-to-date timelines on when things are happening and moving along for this. But it doesn't stop. It really doesn't. After even after it gets passed, there's still things you got to do. So there are appropriations, and so appropriations are they are the items that the government are going to fund for the next year or whatever is in the bill. So these are some examples like the SNAP. So $154 billion would be appropriated to SNAP. There's some other examples there as well of appropriations. And then there's also rulemaking and implementation. So rulemaking is the process of developing or issuing rules, also known as regulations. And this can be added to existing rules or procedures or other things like that. So there are 3 different kinds. There are legislative rules, and I've given examples here. So a legislative rule could say something like, you must not operate your aircraft within 20 miles of a thunderstorm. But a non-legislative rule would be, how do you define a thunderstorm? And then a management or personnel rule, that just applies to the structure or administrative ways of the agency that is implementing the appropriation. So those are the different types of rules, and then it gets implemented on the date that is set on the bill.
So all of that to say that there are lots of points of engagement for the Farm Bill. All of those steps that it goes through in Congress, all the committee hearings, and then even when it's signed into law, there's still all of these parts to be worked out.
Yes, 100%. And a part of that process, so we have our big bill, the Farm Bill. So how do we influence that bill, and what does that look like? The best way to influence a big omnibus bill like this is something called a marker bill. And a marker bill is a regular bill that is introduced into Congress, and this is strictly to signal policy, new policy ideas, or gather support for those ideas. So if there's an issue on certain things, like farmers market nutrition programs or something for beginning farmers, then we would want to call our members of Congress and say, please support this marker bill. And the more sponsors and co-sponsors a marker bill has, the more support it seems to have, the more likely it's going to be added into the big omnibus bill of like the Farm Bill. So like we said, there's so many ways and places to advocate and participate in this process.
So there's not a strict formula for the format of the Farm Bill, but as it currently exists, there are 10 or 12 titles. I don't know why I said 10. 12 titles. And we're not going to look in depth at each one of these tonight, but we're going to pull out some of the most relevant things for the circumstances of our Kentucky Black farming community. You should know, though, that there are some things that are not covered in the Farm Bill that you would think might be in there. So like school meals are in the child nutrition authorization. Same with WIC. Food and Drug FDA administration food safety rules are separate. Meat inspection is under its own laws. Farm and food worker rights and protections are separate. Even parts of USDA are not in the Farm Bill, like the civil rights processes for USDA. If you like have a complaint to file against the USDA, that those processes are not part of the Farm Bill. They're in civil rights legislation. And there's some aspects of land-grant universities that are not in the Farm Bill, and others that are. So I don't know if you noticed in those 12 titles, there's not one that says Black farmers. So there's not just one section of the Farm Bill that covers everything to do with Black farmers, but there are aspects of all of these titles that have relevance to Black farmers, and we're going to go and look at some of the details of these. But first, we want to address the fact that you're not going to really see the Farm Bill talking about Black farmers. You're going to see the Farm Bill talking about socially disadvantaged farmers. And so, Tiffany, are you good to talk about this? Okay.
Yeah, so me and Laurie decided we was going to kind of tag team this whole word, because some of you all that are actually in the chat right now, who are watching, we have been in areas, Bugs Conference, different conferences, just talking amongst each other. And we're like, can we get this name removed? And there's so many different reasons why we want it to be removed. For one, some of us don't feel like we're socially disadvantaged. Some of us also feel like being disadvantaged means that there's a crutch there where we are really trying all that we can to be the best steward, the best landowner, the best farmer here in the state. And some of the barriers make us disadvantaged, but not necessarily that we are disadvantaged. It also opens up this whole group of people, and we all have our own specific needs, barriers, and everything, but they're not in a one size fits all. And this word seems to be just a catch-all that actually causes division amongst socially disadvantaged folks, where we all could be doing a lot more with the funding and the resources. Below listed are the definitions of this, and it's often been asked, how can we change some of the language that is written into the Farm Bill and into our policy, where we have not necessarily our own pocket of money, but where we have our own issues as Black farmers? How do we address those without being put into a catch-all phrase?
Yeah, and there's been some real recent turmoil about how we categorize farmers who have special needs. So you'll see there's two different definitions here. Some programs define socially disadvantaged farmers to include women of any race, and some don't include women. And so there, I don't know if you all have followed the stories about the debt relief that was proposed for Black farmers, and then there were lawsuits that white farmers filed to say that it was not fair that to discriminate on the basis of race, to give debt forgiveness to some farmers and not to other farmers on the basis of race. So categorizing farmers in a race-based way has, for certain benefits, has problems that come with it. Using these broader categories, as Tiffany said, has problems that come along with that too. And so there's not a perfect solution here. There are advantages and disadvantages to being grouped in with socially disadvantaged. And yeah, Martin's pointed out in the chat that CFA has been active in this battle of lawsuits and filed an amicus brief in support of Black farmers in those lawsuits. And another term that you'll see sometimes is historically underserved. So sometimes is interchangeable with socially disadvantaged, but historically underserved can also include veteran farmers.
Of any race.
Yeah.
I know that one of the conversations I was having with a table of Black farmers, and the conversation was, well, what if we did change the language? Would we be out even more? Like, oh, well, you're not socially disadvantaged. We don't have a resource for Black farmers just yet. So, and having the argument that with lawsuits, or would we stir the pot of negativity to continually keep pulling ourselves out of the language when we're actually just wanting to change, not necessarily the definition, but change the way the word reads, because it just seems so negative, right? Like, so, yeah. Oh, and Letitia just wrote in the chat, what is an amicus brief?
So it's a legal document that
I have to pull it up.
that you can file on a lawsuit that a friend of the court. So it's basically you're making a statement on behalf of one of the parties in a lawsuit. All right, so we're going to run through some of these programs that are in the Farm Bill now and look at what programs are in there, and then some of the issues around those programs that are relevant to Black farmers. So starting with credit, access to loans, and some of the things that the Farm Bill determines about credit are who's eligible, what kinds of projects can be funded, what are the terms and repayment terms, what collateral is required. The most direct control that the Farm Bill has over farm lending is through the Farm Service Agency, which is considered to be a lender of last resort for farmers who can't get credit from regular commercial sources. But their scope is limited. So FSA direct lending is only about 3% of farm debt altogether. And they further, besides their direct lending, they also guarantee loans. And that's only about 4% of all farm debt. Now there's the Farm Credit System, which was established even before there was a Farm Bill, which is a government-supported enterprise. So it's a public-private partnership, and they account for 44% of farm debt. And they make a lot of money. They get benefits by being a preferred lender. And so in the year 2021, they had $6.8 billion in income. That's a pretty privileged position. So besides the FSA direct and guaranteed loans, the Farm Bill also sets criteria for that preferred lender status, who can be a preferred lender and what are the terms of their participation. And a couple other things there are the practice of providing a receipt for service is an important civil rights protection when dealing with the Farm Service Agency, and the terms and conditions for that are laid out in the Farm Bill. Making an appeal of a loan decision, if a loan decision is denied, the processes for that are laid out in the Farm Bill. And the heirs property re-lending program is a relatively new program to help settle heirs property. So those are some of the things related to credit. Then if you remember back to the pie chart that Kimmie showed us, that was the big pie was the nutrition title, but then there were 3 titles that were ag titles that had a lot of money in there too. Credit was one, crop insurance is another one. Commodities we're not really going to talk about too much tonight. Those are 3 of the big ones. And conservation. So crop insurance is a big outlay. In that chart that we looked at that had farm payments to different demographics of farmers, crop insurance is one of the big ones. And the Farm Bill determines what crops are covered, who's eligible, what kind of payment limits there are, which is pretty much, there aren't payment limits for crop insurance at this point. But in this chart, you can see who's benefiting from crop insurance programs. And it's only when you get farms above 500 acres in size are more than half of farms participating in crop insurance programs. From 500 acres and below in farm size, less than half of farms. And in some cases, in smaller farms, 10 to 50 acres, way, way, way less than half of farms are participating in crop insurance. So there have been some improvements made in making crop insurance more relevant for small farms and for diversified farms and for urban farms, but there's still a long way to go to make these programs really workable as a safety net for small and diversified farms.
All right, so we'll talk a little bit about some conservation programs. Like Laurie mentioned, there are 3 big other money ones in the budget, and conservation being one of them. It became its first appearance in the Farm Bill in 1985, and then started getting mandatory funding since 1996. One of the big programs in this title is called EQUIP, which is the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, which I will put that into the chat. And this program, along with another one called TIP, which is the Transition Incentives Program. So these are just a few programs that conservation programs that include technical assistance and financial assistance. And 2 of the main provisions for supporting historically underserved farmers are set-asides and increased cost shares. But those are actually pooled with beginning farmers for set-asides. So beginner farmers can sometimes take up all or most of those funds being pulled in with that other group. Laurie, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Just say that some of these conservation programs have been wildly successful in the sense that they get way more applications for funding than they are actually able to fund. So only about a quarter, a little over a quarter of applications that were received in 2022 were funded.
And then looking at some research, here we have some programs that you might be familiar with that fall under this this title of research, like NIFA, which is the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. So this obviously, all farmers need access to high quality research that is actually relevant to their region and their operation. So this is kind of more particular towards diversified and organic growers, but or tend to be younger growers or operate on a smaller operation or have less land. These are some other different programs that are funded through some research programs.
So research and development is really important to any sector of the economy. And for the agricultural economy, public funding of research has really plummeted recently. And something about research is that there's a difference between the 1860s land grant universities and the 1890s historically Black serving institutions, and how they get their funding for their research programs. So it's a federal state partnership to fund those universities. The federal government puts up money, but states have to match it. But for the 1890 historically Black serving institutions, states can request a waiver to not provide 100% of the match that they're to match the federal input. I know. What, Letitia, why? Why is that allowed? A couple other things in the research title. In recent years, the Farm Bill established centers of excellence at the 1890 institutions. So that's another program.
Can you repeat that again?
About the centers of excellence?
About how
about
the state can, what does that mean?
So funding for research at land grant universities, the 1862, I think, land grant universities were established first. And then because the universities in the South were practicing segregation, they weren't going to be allowed to have any more federal funding. So under separate but equal arrangements, they created the 1890 institutions so that Black students would also have a land grant university in most of the southern states. But the funding for them works differently. So there's extension programs at both 1860 land grants and for 1890 historically Black land grant universities. The federal government puts in their share and states have to match that. They have to match 100%, and all of them do match 100% for their 1860 land grants. But states can request a waiver to not provide 100% funding match for their 1890 institutions. Now, some states do provide 100%, but not all states do. Kentucky has requested a waiver, I think, every time that they were allowed to not provide 100% match for Kentucky State is our only HBCU land grant university.
Isn't that kind of like some of the reason they sued for the USDA? Was it kind of, I'm just saying, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, you're rightfully astounded. So, and I think that Governor Beshear has addressed this somewhat, but I'm not sure what the status is of it and where it stands at this point. It definitely is something that needs to be said. Another thing to consider in research is that Black, Indigenous, and other people of color have traditional knowledge about how to do agriculture that is not necessarily recognized by conservation programs, titles from Farm Bill, whatever. So there's a movement and a push to recognize those sources of traditional knowledge and foster them. Hey, so Tanya's got a question. represents the people who asked for the waiver on behalf of Kentucky. You know, I'm not sure who it is that requests that waiver, Anya. I think probably our state Congress, but I'm not sure about that. Well, there's not necessarily an appeal process, but we're going to talk about advocacy and a lot of different routes that you can make noise about things. And one thing to know about in research, there's a lot of new and urgent emphasis on climate resilience. And so we should pay attention to making sure that Black farmers are not underserved and passed over in this new wave of research emphasis.
How can that happen if they haven't corrected the past yet? It's like, it's almost insanity.
Yeah, well, we've had lots of wins.
Who is we?
We advocates for small farms, for local food systems, for Black farmers. There have been lots of wins, and we'll continue to work on the ones that we haven't won yet.
Daddy. Moving on to specialty crops and horticulture. When looking at these programs, we are talking about things like specialty crop grants, organic programs that include things like the National Organic Certification Cost Share. And then we'll talk a little bit more about LAMP on the next slide, which we'll talk about on the next slide. But Laurie is going to talk a little bit about this graph here.
Yeah, just wanted to put this in here to demonstrate that some of these programs are of particular importance to Black farmers because Black farmers are more likely to be participating in some sectors of agriculture. So like you can see of total farms in the US, there's Black farmers are a really small segment of total farms, but they're even a smaller segment if you're looking just at oilseed and grains, which a lot of the commodities and crop insurance payments are focused at that sector. But Black farmers are way more likely to be participating in specialty crop growing. So we want to particularly pay attention to the programs that are supporting those that sector of agriculture because Black farmers are more likely to be participating. So now looking at local and regional food systems, and these programs are part of the horticulture title in the Farm Bill. The Farmers Market Promotion Program, the Local Food Promotion Program, Value-Added Processing Grants, and Regional Food System Partnership Program all got wrapped up together in one bundle under Local Agriculture Market Program. And these are programs that have really been put to work in Kentucky and developing local food systems. I was originally hired to work for Community Farmland under a Local Food Promotion Program grant. Our Farmers Market Support Program has been funded by FMPP. Regional Food System Partnership Programs, we've got a couple of those going right now. We're hiring right now for a new staff person in Louisville under a Regional Food System Partnership grant. So a lot of food system development work in Kentucky that's been funded by these programs. However, they're not necessarily very accessible to smaller organizations with limited resources, and that's a lot of Black-led organizations. What would you like to say about that, Tiffany?
I just want to add in, we were asked by Florida AMU to do a project. Some of you all have completed it. I feel like it was a good time to punch it in there. And I will put the links in the chat. Please let me know if you all do the links. But we are doing surveys to recognize how much these are considered AMS programs with the USDA. And across the United States, these programs are doing amazing work. But like Laurie said, they do not work with small BIPOC necessarily communities or partners. They're looking for validated big partners, people who have validation. So here in the state of Kentucky, there's not a lot, like we are really regenerating this Black farmer work. So for a very long time, there were a lot of regional and local food systems that were really working in the north part, East Kentucky. But when you look into urban areas, urban farming areas, farming, food deserts around Black and brown communities, there are folks who have applied for these. I have Black farmers and educators who were denied. And so I just want to urge everybody to fill out the survey because it's going to help USDA and us know how to implement this better. And there are some things in the work for the 2023-2024 year around Black farmers and these food system incentives. But the biggest thing is that most Black farmers, Black folk, did not even know these things existed. And we already know that there is certain barriers in our farmers markets that Black farmers aren't necessarily there shopping and or vending. So we have some work to do, but this money is available, and CFA definitely can support us building a more sustainable and equitable food system around these programs. So I just wanted to add that.
Great. So a couple of things about these programs are that they require matching funds, which can be a barrier for limited resource organizations. They have complex applications and reporting requirements that can also be a barrier for limited resource organizations. And there's poor geographic distribution of these awards. Like half of them go to California and New York every year, year after year after year. So room for improvement.
To talk a little bit about the urban ag part of the Farm Bill. It mostly focuses on the Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovation Production, new grant programs, as well as some research. The 2018 Farm Bill really built upon some previous support for urban, indoor, and emerging production systems. But these farm programs were typically administered by the USDA, and they could be grouped with some broader categories like marketing and promotion, business assistance and agricultural research, rural and community development, nutrition and education, and also farmland conservation. And then there is the program PHOTO, Farming Opportunities, Training, and Outreach. And those programs, those broad categories I just mentioned are under that PHOTO program. It similarly combines and expands certain existing USDA programs and authorizes the USDA to make competitive grants supporting training, education, outreach, and technical assistance initiatives.
Tiffany, are you up for this one?
I am. Sorry, I was trying to click the link. I seen everybody throwing links in the chat. So outreach and technical assistant, the two biggest of these farming opportunities, training outreach is the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program, and then the outreach and assistance to socially disadvantaged and veteran farmers through the section of the Farm Bill called the 2501. Give me just 2 seconds. Let me click on it real quick. So I will start from the bottom and work my way up. So I am currently, Community Farm Alliance is partnered with Kentucky State University and Black Soul Our Better Nature to implement the 2501. So the Farm Bill in 1990 created 2501 simply for underserved farmers, ranchers, and foresters, anybody who was historically experienced limited access to USDA programs, right? In 2014, the Farm Bill expanded that to veterans as well, kind of what we talked about at the beginning. Of course, the biggest thing about this program is that there is, just like before, you have to have this big entity. Part of the eligibility is that it goes to nonprofits, and it goes to 1890s university colleges, things of that nature. So Kentucky State University, which is our only 1890, has successfully been awarded this 2501 over a series of years, starting in 2010 and going on into the most recent, that was of 2022. Now, the understanding is that the 2501 is to make sure that USDA funding, resources, technical assistance, everything with the AMS programming, I mean, literally everything, NRCS, everything, this information is accessible. There are workshops, there are webinars, there's just all this, Third Thursday at K-State came from, I think, the 2014 2501 that they put together, that is still ongoing and giving a lot of information to farmers. 2501 also opened up the door to having the socially disadvantaged on gender and race rush to Kentucky State University to access all this resource and funding and everything like that. And that was what that was. The Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Program, it's definitely a tool to take farmers who are new to farming or have had land or wanting to go into farming, opening the door not just for farmer, but for rancher, growers, stewards, all of that, and developing their business, and just doing a lot with funding opportunities for education and technical assistance and mentoring. Now, both of these are active and ongoing. These things have been inside the state for a while. And I'm not going to dig too deep, but just know that it's there, and it's accessible to everybody who is on this call and past this call. So.
I just want to quickly mention what all of the money in Farm Bill programs is not applied equally, you can see. And so part of the effect of that is that big farms keep getting bigger, and it's easier for them to buy up more and more land, and makes it harder for beginning producers and limited resource producers to get market share, to get land. It drives up the price of farmland. So the increasing consolidation in agriculture, it has just created all kinds of problems. And so we really need the Farm Bill to address these consolidation and competition issues to make the playing field more fair for smaller farms. So I just want to take a quick look at, we we follow the lead of other BIPOC-led organizations in some of our policy work. And so one of the groups that we look to for leadership on priorities for Black farmers is the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. And so these are some examples of, like, if you were going to choose priority requests for the Farm Bill, this is an example of how you might do that. So at the top, we've got one of their priorities is to improve racial equity in conservation programs by increasing the set-asides for Black farmers. And they've linked their request to what title it goes with in the Farm Bill. Another example at the bottom, to improve racial equity by creating student loan forgiveness program for HBCU alumni. So that's in that top priority, that's an example of modifying an existing program. They're saying to make an adjustment in the set-asides. And in that bottom priority, they're suggesting add a new program to the Farm Bill. And both of those are ways that change can be made in the Farm Bill.
Sorry, I was muted. All right, now we're going to do our own little Farm Bill priorities activity. In the chat just now, I've put our Jamboard link. Go ahead and click on that for us. And we're going to do our, we're going to put pen to paper here and see what you all are looking for your Farm Bill priorities. Little walkthrough tutorial of Jamboards. If you're not familiar, when you open up the link, you will see up here at the very top, you will have a little rectangle, and in it, it'll have some numbers and some arrows, and that means there's multiple slides in the deck, so you can go through and see all the different sections that we talked about or are talking about currently. And then over to the side, we'll have our toolbar, and the fourth icon down is the sticky note icon. The link is to a Google Doc. Hold on. Let me get the right link to that then. Okay, and here is the correct link. Sorry about that.
There we go. Now I see it.
Yeah, I just put it in the chat. Laurie, your screen just stopped sharing. Oh, sorry.
Do you want me to go back to it?
Yeah, I just put the right link in the chat just now. Yeah, if you guys can go ahead and open up the Jamboard and see that. And like I said, you can scroll through the top there to look through the deck of the different categories that we kind of put together. And then after that, click the sticky note icon. You can type in your thought or whatever issue you have, click save, and then you can make your sticky note bigger or smaller. You can move it around the page, whatever you like. We'll spend a few minutes on this and see where people feel like their priorities are. And we do have an other question slide, so feel free if you feel like your priority does not fit in that, in any particular slide, go ahead and put it in the other question slide. And Laurie, maybe put up the Farm Bill priorities from the other group so they have a reference to look at if they have any ideas.
The Federation priorities?
Yeah. And don't be shy, put whatever you think in there. Like I said, if you feel like it doesn't follow or fall under something like the research, innovation, and technical assistance board, then feel free to put it under a different one or under other questions. Let's see, I'll give about 3 more minutes, maybe 2 more minutes for everyone to put some input.
If anybody's not figuring out the Jamboard, you can put things in the chats and we'll add them.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
want you left out.
Yeah, if you feel like you can't navigate Jamboard or can't access the link, just put what you want in the chat and we will transfer it over onto the Jamboard. So we got some in here. More peer-to-peer soil workshops, industrial hemp, farm insurance for events versus crops. Some good stuff going on in here. That's a good one. Access to farm equipment. All right, we'll give 1 more minute for people to get their input before we move on with the slides, but feel free to continue to work on them and input things as we go on throughout the presentation and even afterwards. We'll give you about 24 hours to add to it before we start dissecting it for you all.
Someone put access to funding grants around CEA projects. I don't know what CEA projects are.
Maybe if you add a acronym, maybe put out from the side what the acronym means.
Controlled environment agriculture.
Ah, got it. Funding for labor, that's a big one.
Should we go back to or should we continue on, Laurie? Give a couple more. Or...
Yeah, we can head back to.
And like I said, continue on. This isn't the end. Keep adding with your ideas and input. And so taking those priorities that you all are kind of fleshing out and putting, pen to paper to figure out what you want. We will talk about marker bill advocacy. And we're really going to start getting into the advocacy part of the Farm Bill and the process and how you can participate. So far we've went through what the Farm Bill is, what's in it, what's not in it, what our priorities are, what some other organizations' priorities are. So now we're going to talk about how you all can be involved in this process. And one of those ways we talked about was marker bills and advocacy. So if there is a marker bill to come up, there's multiple ways to be involved. And it can be as simple as sending an email to your member of Congress, calling and leaving a message. You can even set up a meeting or request an appointment with them or their staff. It doesn't always have to be the actual member of Congress. A lot of times it'll be the staff person who meets with you on that issue. Or you can just show up to an in-district event like a town hall or something that they might be attending and just ask them to be a sponsor or co-sponsor of a marker bill that you are in support of. In the chat, I did put the website to where you can find your member of Congress according to your address, so you can know who to contact when we send out these action alerts. And speaking of marker bills to watch. So Laurie, we can touch a little bit on this, but currently not a lot. So you can touch on that.
So there's a lot that were introduced in the last Congress that if they're going to be considered, will have to be reintroduced to the new Congress. Some that we anticipate will be reintroduced are the Justice for Black Farmers Act, which was introduced by Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey. There are the American Rescue Plan Act and the Inflation Reduction Act were not what you might think of as a typical marker bill, but sections of them could very well be incorporated as permanent programs in the Farm Bill. The Increased Market Share Act, the Flexible Financing for Rural America, all of these bills had line items of interest for Black farmers. Then there's some others that haven't been introduced previously, but we expect to see legislation coming out around grants from Farm Credit. You saw that $6.8 billion in income that Farm Credit got. There's some proposals out there that they should take all that money that they make and reinvest it in underserved communities. There's expected proposals around reforming how FSA does receipts for service, reforming credit in several different ways, and plenty of others that I don't think I put in here the farmers market bill, but these were ones that I thought had particular relevance to our Black farmer community. we'll be watching for these, and these are good things when something comes up that's a provision that you like. It's a good time to ask your member of Congress to support it.
All right, and to talk about some upcoming advocacy opportunities around the Farm Bill. So hopefully after this, there will be more trainings and webinars to attend. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at the very end. The Kentucky Food Action Network that CFA is currently a part of, they are hosting a media training on Wednesday. This is for people who are interested in writing op-eds, giving quotes to reporters, or getting interviewed by the press. And then you can also contribute to CFA's Farm Bill platform as well. We have a living document currently that we are getting input on that we will be confirming hopefully soon, by March or so, or summer. So we'll have some time to work on that, but really you're able to participate in that. Then also, you can attend a lobby day with the Kentucky Food Action Network. There is limited space, but we are meeting for our next meeting on February 22nd at 3 p.m. And the Kentucky Food Action Network has Farm Bill priorities that their group is currently coming up with. And
so there's a question in the chat, Kimmie. What is a lobby day?
Yeah, great question, Tanya. So a lobby day is when you get a group of people together and you have multiple meetings in a day with people, with members of Congress. So you can have meetings with Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, Andy Barr, all multiple meetings throughout the day that your group goes to and attends. And it's kind of just a big support, show of support for your organization and your issue when you're at the Capitol. You typically, give, yes, and we also have state legislature lobby days as well when we do state policy issues.
And there was another question before that was missed about why underserved communities is even a reality.
Yeah, I wish I had the answer to that question, and we know that it's a very systematic issue that hopefully we are trying to address in many ways, and hopefully, make some progress on that.
Real quick, like I have asked this question to all different people at all different times, and I just feel like, and I'm not to you because I know you mean well, but I just feel like, how can we fix a problem when people can't even articulate why it even exists? You know what I'm saying? That's something I know for later. It's not really for this. I'm just saying, like, you don't even know why the problem exists, and nobody really wants to give a real answer. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying everybody's bad or anything like that, but I have asked this question and I have still haven't got a good answer, because this underserved community thing is not new. This has been around a very long time, and there is actually no real reason why this actually exists. And if there was a real reason, then people would be able to explain that and articulate that, because we got a reason for everything else and people can explain it. But when it comes to underserved communities, red line, they want to say all these big words, but let's be real about what it really is. And I don't want to take more time up, but I get frustrated because I just feel like, don't pee on me and say it's just rain. Just be honest. Not saying that you're not being honest. I want you to know that. I'm just saying, in general, this question I've asked and people just don't want to really tell me. So, but I appreciate that.
No, it's okay. And I think it's because we could literally take a whole entire day and talk about that one issue, because like some people put in the chat, it's systematic oppression that has been done thousands of years. Like, historically, Caucasian white people, European people have really oppressed a lot of different ethnicities across the whole entire world. So it's something that we could talk about all day long, and it's so heavy to dive deep into that. But you're totally right, and it's hard to give an answer when it comes to that. But when it comes to some more advocacy stuff and some opportunities that we have coming up, Laurie and I will hopefully keep in touch with everyone here. We will hopefully give updates on any marker bills that come up. And then obviously we would love for you all to reach out to your members of Congress, or you can even complete a Farm Bill review for the House Ag Committee, which is a thing as well. So, and a little bit more on some advocacy resources. We talked about
Kimmie, can you there should be a link for that in the notes at Farm Bill Review.
Oh, it is. Yes, sorry.
I would get it myself, but I can't.
No, it's okay. I got it. And here is the link to the Farm Bill review to leave for the House Ag Committee. And then earlier we had talked about becoming a CFA member and everything you get with being a CFA member. Go ahead, Tiffany.
I just wanted to say, because I can dig deep on all the advocacy too, but understand I've been working with CFA for what is my 6th year, I think, 5th, 6th year. Understand that the opportunities that we're presenting, like, I don't know if you've ever anybody been a part of a webinar where it was focused just on us, right? And giving advocacy tips on how we can do things. Now we can give direction, right? And bring representation of folks who are doing this work. But for us to make change or build new systems, because a lot of it is building new systems, not trying to fix the things that were never written for us because we weren't considered when it was written, right? But things going forward to change policy, make new bills, make new laws. We have got to do these advocacy things, and we have to step up in lobbying. We have to be front and center, because we cannot depend on anybody else to do it but us. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you, Kimmie. Thank you, Laurie.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for bringing that up, Tiffany. Yeah, and being a part of CFA, you have so many advocacy opportunities and so many awesome things and ways to connect with everyone. We have recordings available for Farm Bill Basics and our local food Foods in the Farm Bill webinar that we recently did as well. We have some working groups that include meat processing and climate change. We do quarterly newsletters, and you have the opportunity to get involved in not only policy, but disaster relief, farmers market support, and so much more. But also you have the opportunity to network with farmers, small business owners, agricultural advocates, and other allies. So totally go to cfaky.org, become a member if you're not today. You have so many things and ways to advocate, and we hopefully help our members in some leadership development in that aspect. And Laurie, you can go to the next slide of a few of our events here. We have a couple of farmers who testified with me at a committee hearing at our state legislative capitol. We have a farm to table dinner. We have Tatum Lewis and at the Black Farmers Conference, but we also have some CFA members there on the front lines of a picket line. So many opportunities and different ways to participate in Community Farm Alliance and be a part of a great movement. But that's not it. We also have another great resource that CFA is a part of called the Kentucky Food Action Network. And Martin is correct. He just testified in Washington, D.C. Over a bill that is written by Cory Booker, or introduced and sponsored by Cory Booker, about food as medicine, which is great. And there's advocacy along the way as that progresses as well. But with Kentucky Food Action Network, Community Farm Alliance is one of 4 organizations that run the network. So it's Community Farm Alliance, KY Policy, Kentucky Equal Justice Center, and Feeding Kentucky. We host many trainings and webinars. We have one coming up on Wednesday, January 25th for media training. We have all of these recordings available for these past trainings. We have done an Advocacy 101, a 201, a Food RX 101, a Farm Bill 101, but we've also done things like storytelling as a tool for advocacy, and also evidence-based policy, like how do you tell your story while also providing evidence. We have 3 different working groups. Those include child and adult feeding, ag and food systems, and a SNAP and WIC technical assistance group. We also do quarterly newsletters, and this is mostly for networking for people in the ag and food system space, as well as feeding and hunger. So we talk a lot about, feeding programs like SNAP, school meals, things like that, farm to school. And there is a lovely picture of our amazing steering committee members, as well as 2 of our KFAN members who testified also at our State House. And then last slide there, Laurie, for advocacy is this is the KFAN staff, and here are all of our contact information. So if you see a working group on here that you feel like you would love to participate in, feel free to write down those email addresses and reach out to us, and we can get you signed up and being a part of KFAN. And this might be asking you, okay, this is awesome, so what's next? All right. And so we have some things coming up. So we want to make sure, first things first, if we want everyone to kind of put your email in the chat, so we make sure we have everybody who, if you didn't register today, we have your emails. And also make sure that you fill in the priorities document, and that way we can keep progressing, get a cohesive document going, and really put forward some Black Farm Bill priorities. And then I definitely want to lift up the Kentucky Black Farmers Conference that is happening March 3rd and 4th. And like Tiffany said, there is a climate rally for INSAC in DC on March 6th that she will be attending as well. So yeah, there's some things coming up next, as well as some possible trainings on climate conservation, subsidy reform, and hopefully keeping up to date on some marker bills.
I just wanted to follow up real quick and expand on so Kentucky Black Farmers Conference is policy based. So we will be having, like we do every year, conversations where we're sitting around and just getting good things out on paper, out of our minds, into strategic planning format. Kimmie and Laurie will be doing a session with all the good information that we have gathered here today. Also, after they get back from their DC trip with INSAC. So we'll have a lot to do around policy and actually putting things into action and getting prepared for the fall. The climate resilience trip, which is the 6th through the 8th, the week following the Kentucky Black Farmers Conference, we have the ability to bring a group of farmers with us, and everything would be taken care of for you. So if you want to go to DC and you are available March 6th through 8th. Please come. It is a 3-day event with cultural events, lobby day, march rallies, some performances. Like, it's supposed to be a whole vibe, but the idea is to get us pumped up and amped up, ready to go and talk about the things. And I definitely want our BIPOC farmers to be very much in the know and our voices to be heard here in Kentucky around climate and conservation for sure.
So we hope you'll stay tuned, that you'll take action, and we hope we'll see you again soon for some of those. The dates for DC, Joanna, are, yeah, March 6th to 8th. It's right after the Black Farmer Conference.
Yeah. And all right, y'all, I hope, does anybody have any questions, any follow-up? Does anybody want to say anything before we go? We did go a few minutes over, but we're good. And Letitia gets gold stars because she's been here every single training. She's amazing. All right, well, if no one has any questions, be on the lookout for our follow-up. And we will be putting together a document. Hopefully we can get some priorities going, and yeah, looking forward to working with everyone here. Thank you all. I'm so glad you all are here.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.